Hi, everybody. This is Evan Mulch, and I want to share with you a letter that I've written to my Congressman William Timmons. And William Timmons is the person that replaced Congressman Trey Gowdy when Congressman Trey Gowdy decided he did not want to be a congressman anymore. And William Timmons is not supporting the bill to get us out of the United Nations. And that's why I wanted to do this recording. I actually went to an event with Congressman William Timmons this week, and Congressman Timmons said that he was not going to support getting out of the United Nations by co-sponsoring the American Sovereignty Restoration Act. But he did say that he may withdraw funding because if I was correct in telling him that the Lucifer Trust, now known as the Lucis Trust, occupied a meditation room at the United Nations headquarters, he said he would consider sponsoring a bill that would withdraw funding until that room was removed from the UN headquarters. So anyways, I'm going to go through my letter, so I'm going to share it with you because this is an open letter to William Timmons. Okay, I'm going to start by reading the letter. It's dated for today, Friday, January 24th. This is the year 2020. Congressman William Timmons, you requested a letter from me regarding my concerns about the United Nations. As a reminder, I'm disappointed that you have not co-sponsored H.R. 204, the American Sovereignty Restoration Act, the bill that will get the United States out of the United Nations. You don't seem at all serious about doing something that would free us from the United Nations, although you did hint at the idea of presenting a bill for withholding funding from the United Nations until they get rid of the Lucis Trust meditation room at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. First of all, the United States has been delivered to the United Nations ever since the creation of the United Nations. For your reference, I presented this document. I've got a link here. I'll share that with you later for those that are watching. So I'm going to start that sentence over here. For your reference, I presented this document to former Congressman Trey Gowdy on May 9th, 2016, and he gave me about 20 minutes to go over the bullet points with him. It did not excite him to learn the truth about the United Nations, and he never took action afterwards that I am aware of. It was no surprise to me, as Congressman Gowdy had a terrible voting record as a congressman, and it got worse as the years went on, as he scored a failing 51% on the Freedom Index during his final session. And for those of you that don't know the Freedom Index, that is the best constitutional scorecard you can find to find out if a congressman is trying his best to obey the oath to the U.S. Constitution. So I'm going to share with you this document that I shared with Trey Gowdy. As you can see here, I actually handed this to Trey Gowdy after we met. I went into the founding of the United Nations. I went into the Secretary Generals. They've all been communists, Marxists, whatever you want to call it. And every socialist is a Marxist, just so you know, or a socialist. Every socialist is a communist. So they're the same. And but that's who created the United Nations. These were not Americanists. We did not send people like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams to the event to form the United Nations. These were people who wanted to destroy America, and they were able to get their organization created, and a lot of Americans supported it. But anyways, America has suffered due to the United Nations, and one thing that should catch everybody's attention, especially if you believe in God, and especially if you follow Christ, there's one spiritual room or meditation room. They call it a meditation room, but it is ran by a group that was originally created by the Lucifer. The organization was originally the Lucifer Publishing Company. And today it's called the Lucis Trust. So it's obvious that Lucis means Lucifer, so it should be called the Lucifer Trust. But they call it the Lucis Trust to hide the identity of the organization, because a lot of people have raised were aware of it initially and exposed it. So they, like Satan often does, Satan hides and deceives, and that's why it's called the Lucis Trust. But anyways, this is the document that I handed to Congressman Trey Gowdy, and it just goes into detail on how the United Nations is an evil, has evil intentions. I mean, the whole thing is against Americanism, and it's a 5-pager, and I will include a link to this in the YouTube video description so that you can download it yourself and read it, and even share it with your congressman if you'd like to. It is a little bit outdated because it was presented in on May 9th, 2016, but it's good for you to be aware of. And so I'm going to go back to the letter that I wrote to Congressman Timmons. Give me just a second here. Taking a little bit longer than I expected. Give me a break here. Come on. Okay. So I finished here the second paragraph of the letter, and I pointed there's a link here to view Trey Gowdy's score. So I'm going to show you it real quick. This is the Freedom Index from the newamerican.com website, and his cumulative score turned out to be 70%. But as you can see, the last congressional session, the 115th Congress, he scored at 51%. He did start high. He started at 82%. But he just kept going down and down. He should have been hitting 100, throughout though. That's the problem here, is that he did not take his oath seriously. And anywhere on this scorecard where there's a red X, that means he did not obey the Constitution when he placed his vote. This does not grade all the votes. This only grades a few of the votes that take place each year, but this gives you a good understanding of whether or not your constitutional or your Congress is obeying the Constitution, which he swore an oath to. Going back to the letter, paragraph 3. I said here, you did not agree with me that our United Nations membership was unconstitutional. So here's the evidence. Article 25 of the United Nations Charter states that the members of the United Nations agree to accept and carry out the decision of the Security Council in accordance with the present charter. This clearly stated requirement supersedes adherence to the U.S. Constitution, which makes our membership in the United Nations unconstitutional. Additionally, our United Nations membership is unconstitutional because Articles 52 through 54 of the UN Charter permits nations to form regional arrangements to conduct military operations. Under these 3 articles, NATO was created, an organization that has given our military orders for decades without respect to our U.S. Constitution and our U.S. Constitution's requirement for Congress to declare war. On top of all that, Article 2 of the UN Charter states, nothing contained in the present charter shall authorize the United Nations to intervene in matters which are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of any state. But yet the United Nations has meddled in our nation's affairs in such matters as abortion, capital punishment, the right to be armed, border control, mining, judicial decisions, and more. You told me to present you with evidence that the meditation room at the United Nations headquarters is ran by an organization called the Lucis Trust, which means the Lucifer Trust, as the original organization behind the trust was called the Lucifer Publishing Company. The Lucis Trust made this blog post. I put a link here. It says click here to read it. I'll show it to you later. So the Lucis Trust made this blog post to highlight the fact that former United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon began his first day in office visiting the Lucifer Trust meditation room at the United Nations headquarters. You can go deeper down the rabbit hole by studying the works by their Lucifer Trust prophet, Alice Bailey, but I wouldn't recommend doing that unless you are putting on the full armor of God. All in all, the Lucifer Trust needs to be excommunicated from American soil. If you want to learn more about them from their leaders, you could probably go to Asheville, which is nearby Greenville in Spartanburg, and visit their school for esoteric studies. And I've got a link right here that he can click on here. So I'm going to first click on the blog post that talks about the Lucis Trust meditation room. So if you're watching on your screen, if you're listening to this on the podcast, you won't be able to see this, but you can always go to my YouTube channel. It's Evan Mulch, EVANMULCH, and you can view this as one of the videos on here. But the title of the blog is Goodwill, Ethical Responsibility, and Sustainable Development Goals, the Challenge of the Century. And right as you get into about the third paragraph here, it talks about the meditation room at the United Nations headquarters. It says here in the fourth paragraph, annual sessions of the General Assembly in New York begin with the president inviting representatives to observe 1 minute of silence dedicated to prayer or meditation. Thus, silence is not such an unusual thing within the walls of the United Nations. May we therefore invite you to observe 1 minute of silence in which you may meditate, pray, or just simply be silent. You may remain seated, so let us have 1 minute of silence. So anyways, they really want to get people in here. So the president of the Lucis Trust, I think that's who they're referring to, invites all the representatives to do 1 minute of silence in there. But anyways, I mean, so basically every representative is being asked to do a 1 minute moment of prayer or meditation in a room that's ran by the Lucifer Trust. That's openly called the Lucis Trust. So anyways, that's where you get that. And here is the School for Esoteric Studies webpage that's found on the Lucis Trust website. And you can see that they have an office, or they have a study group. So not an office, but a study group in Asheville, North Carolina. And you can go to esotericstudies.net. So if you want to learn more about the Lucis Trust, if you're living in the upstate of South Carolina, like I am, and like Congressman William Timmons is, you just got to go to Asheville and you can find some people that are part of the Lucis Trust. So anyways, this group does exist, and they do have some control if they are the only ones that are allowed to have this room at the United Nations headquarters. A lot of people should question, why is that the case? Well, good question. Why is there not a church inside the United Nations headquarters? Why is there nothing that helps relate to Christianity at the United Nations headquarters? Good question. Anyways, so continuing to read this letter, third to last paragraph here. I have many concerns about your work as congressman. As at our meeting on Tuesday, you foolishly called the United States of America a democracy, and you did not appreciate it when I reminded you that it was a constitutional republic. You should clearly understand that this as a congressman, and should study the document Republics and Democracies by Robert Welch, so that you don't make this type of mistake again. Even better, you may learn enough to where you can teach people in our congressional district on why we have a constitutional republic. So that link right there, he can click on, but I'm going to show it to you here. It's simply on the New American website. It's Robert Welch's speech from September 17th, 1961, and it's about the tyrants of democracies, and how this idea of a republic came about, and who was the first establishment, and how it was just became the best organized government for people that demanded that their God-given rights be protected by their government. So that's why it's so important for congressmen to obey the Constitution, because we have to maintain a healthy constitutional republic. And the more people that are representatives in Congress that disobey the Constitution, the more unhealthy it becomes. So second to the last paragraph here, please stop your support for a dangerous Article 5 Constitutional Convention, aka Convention of States. Also constitutional wars, red flag laws, real ID, and the anti-sovereignty fake free trade agreements like the USMCA. I believe you can change as you have the free will to, and maybe God will lead you towards the truth. I hope that you do not have the same disastrous legacy the former Congressman Trey Gowdy has. He learned the truth from me, but yet he did nothing about it. It's too bad for him, as one day we will all have to be judged by God. And it says here, please let me know if you have any questions. That is I know it's a lot to take in if you've not been studying this stuff, but there it is. You've got links. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can actually go to the YouTube channel and or the YouTube page and look in the links area. I'll have all these links there for you to click on. If you're listening this on the podcast, if you find the podcast episode on Podomatic, I'm going to label this my open letter to Congressman Timmons about the United Nations. So if you find, if you go to YouTube, just type in my open letter to Congressman Timmons about the United Nations. Same if you go to Podomatic, or if you go to iTunes and look at podcasts, you can probably type that in as well. But I will have the links available for you to click on. I'm going to share with you here two videos that are very important. I'm not going to play the whole video, so give me just a second here to pull them up. Okay, you should be able to hear this. I'm using the Zoom software, but this is a very important speech to listen to. It's on YouTube. It's called New Revelations: Why the United Nations Should Withdraw from the UN. It's a speech by John F. McManus, and it's at a council dinner in Bozeman, Montana on June 25th, 2011. And I'm just going to play it. I'm going to speed up a little bit here.
The United Nations is intending to do away with nationhood, but where did nationhood begin? Anybody who's a student of the Scripture, especially the Old Testament, would know that the beginning of nationhood started at a place called the Tower of Babel. These people were anxious to build a world government. They were even going to approach with their structure all the way up to the heavens, but it turned out that God intervened and he confused the tongues, and the project was scrapped. And
so it should be no surprise, as you just listed to John F. McManus, that a group that is organized to build what is like a Tower of Babel, that they would have a Lucifer Trust meditation room within their headquarters. So it should not be a surprise to people. And you know what? It's always important to realize that the John Birch Society, we've been against the United Nations since our founding in 1958. And this is a speech by Robert Welch. It's had millions of views on social media. This is one
an increasingly unbalanced budget, despite
that
the higher
people need
taxes.
to watch, because nothing has changed.
Wild inflation
These guys,
of our currency.
they have their game plan put together. Their
government
strategy
controls of prices,
maybe
wages,
tweak,
and
but it really
materials,
stays the same on
supposedly
how they're
to
trying
combat
to destroy
inflation.
America.
6.
And really what it comes down to is that the only way we're going to save America is we've got to break the back of the New World Order. We've got to break the back of the New World Order, and it's not by electing President Trump. It looks like President Trump's doing some good things for us, but he's also done some things that are bad, like push the USMCA, a sovereignty ending. It's an anti-sovereignty fake free trade deal. But the way we break the back of the United Nations is we get people like Congressman William Timmons, Congressman, Thomas Massey. He's already co-sponsored the bill to get us out of the United Nations. We've got to get more congressmen to understand what's going on. I can't be the first person telling every congressman that the meditation room at the United Nations headquarters is ran by the Lucis Trust, which means the Lucifer Trust. I can't be the first person telling people that. We need Americans that are exposing this and that are sharing these important points about how the United Nations has always been a communist organization. It has always been an organization that wants to destroy American sovereignty. It has always been an organization that wants control of our foreign policy and control of our troops, and it wants to control everything within our constitutional republic. These truths need to be known, and I can't be the only one that's doing this. And I know I'm not, but I'm just really pressing you, the listener, you, the watcher of this video. Congressman William Timmons, I hope you watch this, and I'm talking to you too. You've got to be the one that pushes this, because we need lots of Americans that are willing to take the next step to break the back of the New World Order. And I hope that you'll take a chance at it. Please co-sponsor the American Sovereignty Restoration Act. And please also, maybe take a next step in sponsoring a bill that withholds funding from the United Nations until the prayer room, meditation room, whatever you want to call it, the Lucifer Trust room, is no longer allowed to be at the United Nations headquarters. And let's just empty the building out in New York, and let's just give it to the homeless. Or if you want to replace the building with new tenants, you can. I would recommend the John Birch Society have the top couple levels of the building, so we could relocate our headquarters at a building that used to be occupied by the communists. Let's put real Americanists in there, and let's make America great again, one step at a time, by doing things that are courageous and that not many people right now are willing to do. We got to take the first steps in this. Thanks for watching.